afternoon, everybody. It's David Breslauer with MerlinOne, and I'm joined by my colleague Randy Simpson, and with our friend and customer John Leckie. And we'll get started in a minute, so we're going to give everybody an extra minute to come in.
Good. My name is John Leckie, and I have been working with World Vision now for about 15 years, partly on contract and then full-time. Before I came to World Vision, I was actually a photographer and a video producer, and have spent a lot of time with digital before digital really became mainstream for photo. The studio that I ran was a beta test site for Sony, and so I had spent a lot of time working with digital files, video files, and was asked to come to World Vision to work with them to basically convert their analog slides and negatives over to a digital realm. When I arrived there, I was introduced to Merlin, and after spending some time reviewing it, just decided that it was a good solution. And from that point on, we have been working to convert and to distribute our files via Merlin.
Thanks, John. That's a great introduction. So obviously, you and Merlin have gone back a long time. How long has World Vision been using your Merlin system?
Merlin has actually been used by World Vision since about 1995. And at that point in time, when I first came on, we were doing not hosted, but everything was server localized. And that was a good solution, but oftentimes was difficult for the IT department to respond as quickly as we wanted it to. So we did basically a review. We contracted with the University of Washington to look around and see what was available. And after about 3 months of review and discussing with stakeholders, it was decided that Merlin was still the best of breed. And at that point in time, we moved on to a hosted solution, and also incorporated video, which is, as I mentioned, part of my background, and was one of the deliverables that I wanted to have available for us. Recently, the screen that's up right now is a new site that we've created called the Content Hub, and the site is focused on delivering assets supporting U.S. marketing campaigns. This is a really highly edited and curated site where clients can access current motivational assets that are used for a number of different channels within World Vision US.
Well, John, you've talked about internal channels, and you talked about lots of different stakeholders. So can you give us an idea of some of the internal departments that depend upon your Merlin dam?
Yeah, basically we have a number of different departments within World Vision US, and those internal clients include content marketing, sponsorship marketing, video productions, creative solutions, the Internet Business Unit, the intranet, mobile, public relations, grant reporting, reports for the board of directors, and currently the president office is using it for his speeches. So as you can see, initially, only a few people were using it, but over the years we've expanded that to a number of other departments that rely on the system to find assets for motivational speeches and collateral materials.
Wow, so a lot of different people are looking at content in Merlin. That must be a challenge. What are some of the major obstacles that Merlin helped you overcome with managing your digital content?
Well, first of all, just having everything in place. I mean, at first we found that our advertising department had a lot of their files stored away in one place, and the president office had a bunch of stuff on their computers and stuff. We've gotten people And it's not perfect, but we've gotten people to support and send in their materials so we can repurpose it for other activities. But I'm somewhat lost here. But
No.
the other area that we really utilize, and that is the featured content section. And the reason for that we found just excellent for the different departments is going into a large repository or asset base. Not always do you find what you're looking for immediately, and we are kind of on a time crunch as far as getting information out as quickly as possible. So using the featured content, we can do something that Merlin does really well, and that is linking assets together. So this new content hub is basically a place where clients and users can go to and be able to find curated portfolios of material that are kind of based around current campaigns or issues that we're dealing with. And it really saves a lot of time for them to be able to go in and find the story connected to the photographs, to the video, to any field notes that might be available.
So can you talk to a little bit about maybe a specific world event that World Vision responded to where the Merlin played a role in that, and can you talk specifically about the role that Merlin might have played?
Well, Merlin plays a pretty critical role during what we call HEAs, or emergency events, and I put together a little slide here of an event in Haiti, and once again, we're utilizing a place where we can put in story material. We create contact sheets of everything that's shot. We don't always put up everything onto our site just to make it a much tighter edit for people to use. But Haiti was a prime example of, we have internal photographers and communicators and media people who go to an event, and we will use any possible means to get material back. We send beacons or satellite modems, cell phones, satellite phones, all types of material to be able to respond. And reporting is a really important part of the whole donor experience. There's so many instances where money is gathered and it isn't used efficiently or properly, and we want to be able to be good stewards of donors' money. And so photos and story and video are critical to both donor input as far as donations and also reporting afterwards. So what you're seeing here are photographs that were sent back via the new plug-in increment for Merlin, where you can directly upload to Merlin, which saves a lot of time. Since we don't have the availability in the U.S. of having a 24/7 group, this allows when an event's happening, like the tsunami that we went to, or Africa, they can send material in and we can get to it the next day. Photographs are the DNA of World Vision and stories. They are what I call the motivational assets that are critical to bringing people to a place of wanting to contribute or to be a part of the story. I have seen with photographs coming in on an emergency situation, one photograph raising $1 million. So definitely they are critical to our whole marketing and reporting process.
So I really like how you described motivational assets, and that a picture is indeed worth not necessarily only 1,000 words, but millions of dollars. That's kind of interesting. And also I like the fact that you talk about photos being used kind of at the beginning of a story as a motivational tool, but also after the story as a report on what World Vision has accomplished. And I think that's very, very interesting. I really like that.
Well, one of the things that I've done, and not everyone within the organization responds to the word damn, so I needed to come up with something a little bit different, and so we've referred to it, or I've referred to it as a motivational asset management system. And it really speaks to what we're trying to do, is we're trying to motivate people to empathize or to come alongside and assist people when they're in need. And so that's where I, on a regular basis, refer to it as motivational assets.
Oh, I like that. Thank you. Can you talk about some efficiencies that Merlin might have played in your in campaign fundraising efforts? You've already talked a little bit about that with the content being motivational assets and that they can raise money. So can you talk a little bit more about efficiencies in that effort?
Sure. A recent campaign that was done within the year was focused on water. And since we have a number of large, both governmental agencies and private donors who submit large amounts of money for drilling wells around the world, we focused on water, and the campaign was generated from that. We were able to put together a number of photographs, both from kind of a commissioned, since there are a number of photographers that travel for us, they were looking for those types of situations. We put them together once again using the featured content, which was stellar as far as delivery. And I'm just looking to see, now that I see that on the screen, I don't see the water right now, but that was last year's campaign where we moved on to back to sponsorship. But we have a variety of people using the system. We have very experienced people who can go in and find what they're looking for by using the meta tags and the search mechanisms. We have other people who are basically working maybe in the one of the director's offices as an admin and needs to put together a PowerPoint for some type of presentation. Those folks rely on having somebody help them, and that's either by one of our wonderful library assistants who does the research and delivers it. Once again, Merlin does a great job as far as linking and delivering the assets to the people. Or if they go to this particular site, they can be assured that they're going to find the most current material that we have in a portfolio ready for them to use. The other area that is really important for featured content is we have a number of U.S. kind of almost like salespeople. They're reps that work in certain regions, and they're on a daily basis meeting with either major donors or corporations. And so they need to instantly tailor either a PowerPoint or a keynote presentation for them, and having that ability to go into the water portfolio and find images that support what they're talking about is just brilliant.
You know, I like your use of the word portfolio, and I think you know, we hear collections referred to using a lot of different terms, collections, of course, and projects and light boxes, but I think the word portfolio is probably very apropos, especially for the work that you're doing. So I think that's interesting terminology that you've adopted.
Well, maybe I'm old school, and it was when I was in art school and I had to present portfolios of stuff, so I just kind of carried that over. So if you like it, use it.
And of course, it makes a lot of sense. So I like it. So, you know, obviously you've got lots of different people trying to use Merlin. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with getting Merlin adopted across your different World Vision users?
Yeah, that would be, it's always a challenge in any large corporation or group of people to get everybody to buy into it. And I think what we've done over the years is provided, alongside with Merlin, excellent customer service within our organization. So when someone needs something, Lauren will be the person who does the research, finds what they really need, presents to them a portfolio of assets that they can look at, and that makes it really an easy process, a workflow. The other area that
well, so
go
hang
ahead.
on, because I want to get you to expand on this a little bit, because Merlin does not come equipped with a Lauren. So can you tell us a little bit about who Lauren is and what her function is
Sure.
with Merlin?
Well, software is wonderful, but people are wonderful too, and it's kind of a combination of both that work together. Lauren is currently our librarian at World Vision US, and she is the one who receives the photographs, sometimes either directly on Merlin or oftentimes other ways. I mentioned before we've used FTP sites, we've used Dropbox, all these other different ways. Particularly during emergencies, not every country has the ability to be up and running, so we have to rely on those things. So she will receive the images. She will check the metadata, and usually there's a story that comes along with it. And we have, in the past years, tried to include everything we possibly can into every image. So we will, if there is a story attached to the group of images, we will embed that into the metadata along with the keywords and a numbering system that we have generated from using numbers from the UN and country codes. So we have basically country codes, keywords, photographer, copyright, and then the story embedded, and that travels with the photograph. Now, that can be one. The other thing that also sometimes comes along would be GPS coordinates, and we do a lot of work in certain countries where that information probably is a dangerous situation for people. Darfur and some of those countries where there have been wars, that is not something that we really want. So we're now in the process of, we've developed, the International World Vision has developed child protection protocols, which is now defining what we can send along with each photograph. But Lauren is the kind of the gatekeeper for delivery, and so if it's going to social media or other areas, she will kind of either work with the client to help them remove material, or if it's something that's necessary, it will stay with it.
Okay.
So Lauren is our hero, and is really the one who is the go-to person when something is needed.
And every Merlin should have a Lauren, it sounds like.
Highly recommended. I mean, Merlin is stellar, but Merlin is like every other piece of software. You got to talk to it to get what you want.
So, John, that kind of gets me to the last question I have for you. And then when we're done here, if you can stick around for another few minutes, we're going to open it up to questions, and the questions can be specific to John's presentation, or they can be anything Merlin related. So we're happy to take your questions. Go ahead and type them into the question area of the GoToWebinar area. But John, to wrap up your portion of this, so if you were to give advice to somebody that's starting the process of looking at their at their digital asset management options, what sort of advice would you give them?
I think that the main thing is getting a group of people together and sitting down and at least listening to the needs of the different groups. Not that you can answer all the issues or questions that people would want, but it gives you a basis of buy-in from one standpoint. It also gives you kind of a sense of what people are willing to commit to a budget as far as this bigger thing. I mean, we basically have funded this out of one singular department, but part of that whole process was also evaluating what these images are worth, and there's a number of ways to do that. I was able to put together some numbers of both cost mitigation or cost savings of having a repository, And on the other side, like I mentioned, also the worth of these images. I think that's probably the hardest part for people to understand, is that there is cost savings in time, and there's also valuation as far as the assets of what they mean for either being repurposed or even just a single use for what we were working with.
John, great. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think it's always interesting to hear how our customers are using Merlin, and we do have a wide variety of customers. Let me make that change, and so I can open up the question pane and see what we've got here. So let's see. Oh, can we show the featured content area and explain this more? So sure, Deb, I can explain that. So Deb Jennings at New York Power has asked about the featured content page. And of course, this is part of our new web interface. And the featured content page can be configured to display whatever picture you would like on the page, whatever text you would like displayed below the page, and then at the top, you can display both collections or projects that you want to show up here, and you can also display saved searches that you want to show up here simply by putting them in a collection folder or a saved search folder called featured content. And so once you've created that master folder, you can put saved searches or collections in there, and that will cause them to automatically show up. And the collection folders and the featured content folders are special. They will show up on this page regardless of your user group membership. So most collections and saved searches, you don't see them if you're not a member of a common group of users, but this overrides that functionality, and everybody should see your featured projects and your featured saved searches. And the other thing that you can do is you can set it so that when your users log in, they are taken straight away by default to the featured content page. Or you can make it so that they can access the featured content page after login by clicking. There's a star icon in the main toolbar that they can click, and it brings this page up. So I hope that answers that. And so also next question, oh, this is probably for you, John. Is hosted or on-premises better? So we like both, obviously, but some customers prefer to be on-premise. The White House is a good example of that. You've had both of those, so tell me what your thoughts are now.
My preference at this point in time is hosted, and that's only because of the this is going to be a plug for you, the excellent customer service and support that comes from Merlin. We have found that when we had servers on site and we had to go through our personal IT department, they weren't always the quickest. So my preference would be hosted.
Okay, thanks for that. And if you want to further expand on the question, let us know. We can discuss it in more detail. So now I have a question, and I've got two questions that are kind of related. So the first one is, do World Vision staff or clients get to search Merlin on their own, or do they always go through Lauren to get the assets or content that they're looking for?
Good question. No, everyone has their own. Anybody who has a World Vision email address has access to Merlin. We have restricted that, and I didn't bring this up. We have a very tightly curated archive. Anybody who works for World Vision US has access to the hub. Anybody from the outside, a vendor or those types of news outlets or any of those types of things, we basically pull the images and deliver them via the linked process. That goes back to that discussion I had about child protection, and we just would much rather make sure that we are tightly curated.
So for your external users, you want to make sure that the data has been scrubbed from the pictures before it's delivered to them. So
definitely, yes,
that's interesting. And of course, you know that's one of the things that we're currently working on for you is the ability to ensure that that when content is downloaded, for most users, the data is scrubbed. So that's something that we are working on for you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Here, this is a good question. So what about, do you have a process for developing keywords? And I don't know if, what insight you have into how Lauren has gone to assigning keywords to content, but do you have a process for that? Is aware of?
Lauren would be a much better person to answer that, but I will try to. Over the years, we've developed way too many keywords, but I think the keywords originally came from a lot from the stories that came in, and then specific things that World Vision US does as far as in-field activities, whether it be water wells or child sponsorship or those types of things. So it's just a process of observation and also finding out what works as far as when people search.
Okay. So related to that, this is another question, but it's kind of related to that. We've talked specifically about keywords. What about other types of metadata? Do you have any other strategies for compiling metadata and assigning it to content that's from a similar campaign, other than just putting them in featured content folders or things like that? Do you have some other metadata strategies that you use?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah, I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think, once again, what we're trying to do in the quickness of the moment is to provide as much information as we possibly can. So when we have somebody go and do an event, one of our photographers, they're also writing stories about each one of the persons photographed or situations photographed. And if we can put all of that into one of the fields, as far as content, that kind of creates the metadata that we're searching on. And Merlin does an excellent job of being able to highlight that.
But you're also linking things together. So, for example, in this particular slide, you've got all of these photos, and then you've got a contact sheet, and you've got a story. And so chances are, in this particular Merlin system, these items would all have been linked together.
That's correct.
And so if you find the story, for example, because you did a search and found the story because of particular words that were used in the search and they appear in the story, that would also enable you to discover what the story is linked to. And so that would be these other photos in this contact sheet.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, all right. Cool.
And that story, let me just add to it, that story would most likely be in most of those images embedded also. So it's like a redundancy where you're going to find it multiple different ways.
Okay. All right. Well, John, this is great. Everybody asked the perfect number of questions, so we're at our 30 minutes, and we like to keep these short and sweet for everybody. We'll send everybody the link to the video once we get that processed so that you can have access to that. If there are no other questions, I just want to say on behalf of MerlinOne, John, thank you very much for joining us. And also to all of you that took the time out of your busy schedules to join us on the call, thank you very, very much. And we'll see you next month. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.